Despite the initial optimism surrounding Liverpool's opportunistic signing of Federico Chiesa this summer, his start on Merseyside has been plagued by various injuries and fitness and availability issues. And now we are seeing him linked with loan moves back to Serie A. I sat down with Paul Gorst from the Liverpool Echo to try and sort through this, gauge his current situation and whether Liverpool are likely to try and loan out or cash in on the Italian winger in the upcoming transfer window. If you want to check out the full show and everything we do over on redmenplus.com, I've got a great offer for you for that. Head there, choose a Captain yearly subscription and use the code TOP, T-O-P, to get a half price offer on our yearly subscriptions. All that great content, podcasts and documentaries as well. Anyway, on with the show. One of the wilder bits of transfer speculation over the last week, I wanted to pick your brain on it because we spoke a bit about Federico Chiesa I think last week, and how we were a little, or the week before, we were a little, or you particularly, actually, I was quite surprised how opinionated you were on the Chiesa thing up to so far, and obviously we talked about the similarities of players that have come before and carried a little bit of a stigma with injuries, they've never hit the ground. He's been linked with a loan move back to Serie A. He's been linked with a loan move to Inter Milan. And I'm happy to spin this out in any way, really, but I can't. I mean, first of all, if give me your thoughts on that as a thing before we actually talk about its possibility.
I don't think there's any appetite for Liverpool to offload them just yet. I asked Slot about it before the Villa game, and he said he's not concerned about the unavailability of them at the moment, but it's far from ideal, I think, with his words. And he sort of spoke about getting him a full pre-season under his belt. He last played competitively before he played for Liverpool in June, so he sort of went from June to September without playing competitively, without playing any sort of football. Actually, he barely had the pre-season to call his own at Juventus. Sort of frozen out because of a contract wrangling. Liverpool took advantage of that situation, feeling that they could get him back to a level that he was at maybe three years ago when he was, the star of the Italy team. So far, it hasn't worked out, but you'd also say that maybe it is early days at the moment. My concern is it's not necessarily you can pinpoint what his injury is. You can't say, oh, he's got a calf injury or his hamstring's gone or, whatever it may be. It's just struggling with the intensity, which is it has to be considered a bit of a concern for me anyway. And the big worry is when he stops getting asked about him, because that's when journalists just think, I'm not wasting a question asking about a player who I know is not going to be fit. Yeah. And that was sort of the fate that befell Thiago at times and Joel Matip in certain circumstances.
Can I just ask from a professional perspective, does that become a question that you almost, you wouldn't waste the question, as you say there, in the open press conference, but is that something you'd give, like, I don't know, someone like Tony Barrett a little nudge and go, is it worth me asking? You know what I mean? Like, is that where you almost, collectively, the press pack kind of know through the grapevine, there's no update because this guy's not been seen or whatever? Yeah,
maybe. I mean, it's still early days to say how that might go, but I asked about Chiesa just because Slot's always been a bit non-committal on what the issue is. I think he gave a bit of an update in Leipzig, which wasn't too far ago, and the hope was maybe a couple of weeks down the line he'd be a bit closer towards, being brought back in, but just going back to the original question about Inter on loan, like I say, I don't think there's any appetite for that. But, if that does become a bit of a option for club and player in January, there's maybe a little bit of a cynical side of me that thinks Liverpool will be able to earn money on Federico Chiesa if he is able to get fit and sort of re-establish himself as a key player back in Serie A. But at the moment, I don't think that is on the agenda, but I think it might be something which could potentially become an option in a couple of months' time.
It just doesn't feel to me like the only way anyone benefits from this is if you don't want to keep Federico Chiesa, I think. And that's, as you're saying there, is that the obvious place to sell him back to is Italian football. I mean, good luck. We've tried that before. Everyone remembers the Mario Balotelli sagas. Alberto Aquilani, where, and you end up in this endless cycle of loan, return, pre-season loan, and repeat. the logic is solid from that perspective, but that's and it's being portrayed though as this. Well, he needs to get sharp, he needs to get fit. He's just done a season in Serie A.
Yeah.
He's played international football. That was not the issue. The issue is that he doesn't seem to be capable of the physical demands being placed upon him here. Yeah. And there's no way that going back to the league you've spent your entire career at better physically prepares you for the challenges at Liverpool that lie ahead.
Yeah, and also as well, unless you're being uber cynical and Liverpool have done this purely to make a few bob quite quickly, then if they do let him go on loan, then you have to say, well, you felt that you needed a six forward in the summer, so you still need a six forward, and you've just allowed someone to go on loan, an Italian international nonetheless. So, will you be doing any business in the forward line in January? So, yeah, there are a number of options to this one, but at the moment, I think the party line seems to be, let's just get him fit and see how how he turns up in this particularly busy period, because they could do with them, really, couldn't they? What's coming up?
100%. It was referenced. I'm not sure by slot, but I don't think we see Luis Diaz play centre forwards if Chiesa is available, even Harvey Elliott's available. It gives Liverpool more options. He clearly wants to have this. Liverpool have never had this many options for the front line before. They've never owned that many players. I've referenced that on videos in the past. When we won the Champions League, Ryan Brewster makes the Champions League final bench. Yeah. And he is effectively the fifth choice forward by that point. Daniel Sturridge has had his go and it's not worked out for him in the first half. After the first half of the season, Divock Origi is the guy off the bench by that point. Yeah. But to have that level of depth is unprecedented for the Reds. So it's whether they feel that's essential to what they do. And moving ahead to the January conversation is, if they were to take that option, I think it's what you're kind of alluding to. You can't imagine they're doing it. It doesn't feel like a money spinning exercise. If it happens to do that, I'm sure they'll be made up. It does scream that they would need someone, and then it's the question of, is there someone within the ranks that can then take that role already, or do they have to go back into the transfer market? Because it's clear Chiesa has been bought to help rotate Mohamed Salah, and he hasn't been able to do that. Yeah,
and he hasn't been brought in with a long-term view of being Salah's replacement. I'm sure if he got himself fit and he was a 30-goal a season player, I'm sure that would naturally be what happens in a couple of years, but I don't think that this was a transfer where Liverpool thought maybe they didn't think too much further down the road. It was just a case of get him in, get him fit, and see what he can do. Relatively low cost fee for a player of his quality. But what are we now? 3 months in, and we're still waiting to really see it, aren't we? We've seen an assist against West Ham in the League Cup, and then other than that, was it 15 minutes against Bournemouth and 2 minutes against Milan?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, things can be put right. A lot of the players that we've spoken about over the years as being real concerns, particularly for fans and our anxieties around their injury issues. Like Konate was a big one, and at the risk of jinxing everything, it's not my fault. My words don't have any impact on how fit or not fit Ibu Konate is. Let's make that clear. But they're having good returns on that. Again, Mohamed Salah's in his 30s doing well. Virgil van Dijk is performing at a level, when he's coming towards the tail end of his career. Jota was going well. It's an impact injury. Nothing can be done with that. So I think they'll be hopeful that they can get a tune out of Chiesa. We might be laughing about this in a couple of months' time when he's up to his level. Yeah, and the good news is, I think it's a general point as well, that Liverpool haven't needed Chiesa to be fit and firing on all cylinders. They've been able to manage him and doing what they can behind the scenes to get him up to speed, whilst the other five are doing really well. So it's not a major issue, but the more it goes on, the more concerns should start to creep in, I think.